What if the greatest spiritual teacher that you'll ever have is not a retreat or a guru or a spiritual workshop or an ancient text? What if it's your marriage or your children or your difficult coworker or your family relationships? What if it's your garden where you grow your own food? What if life itself, as it is the spiritual path? I think one of the biggest mistakes in modern spirituality is that we kind of separated spirituality from life itself. We meditate, we relax, we are mindful, we do yoga, we do all these spiritual practices, but we forgot how to live life, how to set boundaries, how to say no, how to protect ourselves, our spaces, our families, how to cook food to nurture our loved ones, how to grow our own food, or even how to be with pain and with grief. But what if spirituality is not about escaping life or transcending life, but it's about learning how to fully live it and embody it? Hi, my name is Emese Kelemen, and this is The Sacred Journey, the journey of a woman who holds. And this channel is mainly for women, for seekers, for spiritual seekers, for those who want to help others, hold others, but maybe struggling with holding themselves first. And a lot of times it can be a result of misinterpreted spiritual teachings or even spiritual abuse. A lot of times I see that in women, that they try to grow themselves so they can give without burning out, yet they are taught to kind of ignore life itself and focus on even on the toxic positivity and always just be in light and love, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful concept, but it's like we are trying to build a house without having a strong solid base. And by strong solid base I mean these essentials to be able to take care of ourselves, mainly setting boundaries, acknowledging our own feelings and emotions, knowing ourselves. That's why the ancient people, that's what they thought, that the path to true spirituality and for every difficulty in life, the best tool is to know thyself. That's what the writing in the Delphi oracle says in Greece. So the ancient ones, the ancestors, the indigenous cultures knew something that we seem to forget the more and more we separate from nature, from the wisdom of life, and from actual living examples in our environment, how life is supposed to flow, and whatever wisdom it has in itself, the more we are separated from it, the more we are confused. And we just try to find our way back to this original sacred path of life. But we might not have any tools. We might live in cities, in these box like apartments, absolutely not having any connection with nature, not even knowing where is east or south, or we don't even know what the weather is like without checking it on our phones. We don't even know the time without looking at our phones again, or our watches. And this this is one of the signs how we lost the connection from life itself, from the sacred. And we are trying to learn these things back, finding spiritual wisdom of life in texts, mostly books or other people's teachings. And a lot of times there's nothing wrong with the male teachers. It's beautiful. They have their role in the spiritual world, but I see a lot of times that women who have their own intuition and their own wisdom, innate wisdom, they kind of don't listen to their instincts, but they just blindly follow any teacher, any any male teachers who just are very confident and say they know the truth. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I think it's very unnatural for us not to listen to our own wisdom and our instincts and to our hearts, where the Creator is talking to us and guiding us gently, or sometimes not so gently. And I've seen in my life, I mean, I've seen a lot of people, mainly women, to get this spiritual burnout because they kind of were taught to focus on ascending instead of embodiment, and focus on this light and love and the angelic realms and light language and the beautiful light and energetic realms, which is beautiful. But when we at the same time ignore our own bodies and our physical environment where we were born to for a reason, that can be not very good. And as I said, I've seen a lot of women who had this spiritual burnout, that they were following external sources like, yeah, other teachers, books, writings, even dogmas, and they were very strict and tried to follow everything very strictly without having their own common sense to kind of ask questions or see that is this path, it was really for them, because maybe all of us can approach the spirituality differently, and there's no one fit all solution. And like one of the examples, a woman I know were following a lot of masters, mostly very confident and loud male spiritual teachers, but from this place of effort and white knuckling, pushing through, being even, okay, very strictly vegetarian or even vegan. I will talk about that more later on. There's nothing wrong with the intention of not wanting to harm other beings. That's beautiful. But again, a lot of times we don't have the fundamentals before that. So, anyways, this woman was trying to do all this, and she had tremendous toxic and abusive people in her life, a toxic relationship, and again, a lot of spiritual teachings that suggest that, oh, always just be loving, nice, and again, the difference between kind and nice, and the difference between naive love and mature love. And she was just in the place of this naive, childlike love, and couldn't set boundaries. That was not in the spiritual teachings, to actually kindly but very firmly set boundaries, tell the other people to back off, leave her alone, to be able to live. None of these happened, and then there came a collapse, a burnout. And when somebody is in this vulnerable place with good intentions but kind of becoming bitter and resentful, disappointed, it is very common that these people go to the totally seemingly other direction, but just following some external source, just the same, just maybe somebody who teaches the opposite of the previous spiritual teachings. So a lot of times these people can be victims of cults that seem very appealing at first, but also not empowering people, but kind of acting as the battery or the power source all the time. And if the people, the members, are not plugged into it all the time, they cannot function. And that's a very dangerous approach to spirituality. And that's why I think just following the example of ancestors, if we have good examples in our lives, maybe our great great grandparents, how they lived everyday life as a spiritual sacred practice, or even indigenous teachings that were not written down a lot of times, were just passed on with the direct knowledge and maybe telling stories. Uh, that can give us a different approach or a different model, because we should be able to differentiate uh, between teachings by seeing the actual effectiveness in our lives. So if a teaching or a practice is empowering us, yet helps us to become more insightful and humble, so not from a place of arrogance, but from humility, that we can embody uh, practices more and more that allow us to live a happy, fulfilled life, and we can feel more alive, more in the flow of life, stronger, more authentic, with more agency. Then we can tell that it's good for us and it's good for our environment too. But if we just blindly follow something that actually we kind of have to reread 100 times or re-listen to it 100 times to be able to function in this world, and just bringing us into this isolated place or this delusional place, then early on it would be good to recognize this. Because if a person is just led on this path for a very long time, that's how our brain works. Whatever we listen to a very long time, we will believe it. It becomes our unconscious programming. The same thing is true with like commercials. That's how they work exactly. Or in massive genocides in the history, that's how those murderers were trained to listen to a lot of programming that were absolutely against their core beliefs, maybe at first, but the more they listened, the more they embodied that. So it's just a side note, pretty much, but that's also a danger of separating some high teachings from everyday life. And that's always the judge of a spiritual teaching, how we function in life. So life, yeah, is the ultimate judge of a spiritual teaching. And yes, about that isolation, that a lot of spiritual teachings and communities, but mostly I'm talking about cults, but even in not cult like structures, it can give the sense of separation for the spiritual seekers, that, oh, we are enlightened now, or we will be, or we are on the path, the others are not. I know what I'm talking about because I did this. I mean, it can give a sense of accomplishment or encouragement, or maybe it has some benefits at the beginning to see that, okay, now I'm doing something that I didn't used to do. But a lot of times it goes to the all the way to the other end, or to the other extreme, that we as spiritual seekers can feel that we are superior. I heard members of a spiritual community calling others who were not a member of that exact same community muggles, a Harry Potter reference, that the non-magical people who are not witches or wizards. And that just suggests already that it might not be the right path, because you are already very judgmental, or we are already very judgmental, and that's never the goal. So I really think that the truth is in nature itself. The more natural, like natural world, going out to nature, observing it humbly, like in the famous book of Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist. That was the essence of the story, that when the guy just wanted to get the spiritual knowledge, really wanted to force it, then nothing happened, or a character who did that, and this other guy who just actually started to pay attention to life itself, to the elements, to the desert, and he got the enlightenment. Those, again, another Harry Potter reference, those can find the philosopher stone who are not looking for it, who are pure at heart, or even the disciples of Jesus, who are just everyday working people, pure of heart, not with these big ambitions and spiritual arrogance. They could hear the teachings and they could probably embody it. I don't know that part very good, but I think those teachers, even who are very true or sound very true, they just everyday people, and they are absolutely vulnerable about it and life's challenges. Because sometimes in spirituality we just want to transcend pain and life challenges and go around them instead of just acknowledge that this is the greatest teaching of life, and the true path is through it, humbly, and feeling the pain intensely, or as much as it is as it is. So yes, that's why I think that looking back in my life, I was lucky to know my great grandparents. That for me right now in my 40s, being a mother and a wife, looking back at my grandmother, who always hosted this family, or actually more of my great grandmothers, two of them that I knew, hosting these huge family events with, I don't know, 20 plus or maybe 30 plus participants, cooking meal for everyone, cleaning the house before, doing the dishes after. And for me, this is more valuable and more life supporting and a greater act of love than just being selfish and going to a spiritual retreat to kind of fill in that void in the heart that the lack of love causes. So I think you know the difference already, or feel it where I'm going with this. And that's why I really honor the ancestors and those people who actually lived in the cycles and circles of life, even if they ate meat and were not very hype spiritual vegetarians, but raised their own animals. They didn't eat a lot of meat, at least in my culture. They ate meat, I think, on Sundays, pretty much. And mostly it was a vegetable based and fat based diet. You could say, with fancy word these days, that may be ketogenic. So they just had that innate wisdom and living with the nature, knowing their own animals, raising them. And then, if you've seen the movie Avatar, that's a beautiful scene where the woman teaches this American soul how to kill beautifully. I mean, I'm not saying this killing is good, but there in that scenery and in my ancestors' lives, raising their own animals, honoring them, and when they needed food, especially in the winter, then with absolute gratitude, taking their lives and eating them. And I think I know it's very controversial, but that's how I see it, that it might have been a more spiritual connection to the oneness than just being super isolated, not knowing anything about nature, just in this very isolated context that, oh, now I work in a multi or a very big company, I'm super trendy, but I only drink almond milk, and I go on the retreats separately, and I just have these small parcels and tiny boxes of life, and I chopped up everything, and I don't have the wholeness, the whole flow. And I heard also spiritual teachers saying that, oh, if you cannot be a vegetarian, then buy your meat in the store. You shouldn't be the one butchering it because that's extra karma. And again, the morals versus some dogmas and teachings that I'm washing my hands. I didn't do that. I don't have any feedback. I just eat it, and I didn't see that anymore, so I don't know how bad it was for it. I think it's way worse than raising your own animal and as a sacred act for preserving your own life and feeling that you are not separated, maybe taking it, opposed to this absolutely sterile and disconnected point of view where you cannot get the feedback. I think feedback is very important in the life. We cannot just do that, oh, somebody else does the dirty work and I just remain this or that. On my, maybe it's another controversy. I like almond milk too, and yes, maybe it has its own benefits, but we don't think about when we try to be this absolute spiritual, very sterile, very proper rule following, or very idealistic, but not connected to life people, that those people who maybe had one cow on the whole farm and just provided for, I don't know, 20 people in their big family and helpers on their little farm. Uh, they, or maybe goats and having goat milk. Maybe that was a smaller uh, footprint than just having factories and boxing the almond milk and transporting with a lot of semi trucks millions of beehives or bee families in boxes to the other end of other side of a whole continent to, in a very short amount of time, try to pollinate those poor almond trees. And then obviously if you've seen an almond, it's not the juiciest thing in the whole world. So that extra processing, that mass manufacturing, again, the boxing, the using the water, mainly the transportation, and the bees having higher chance to get infected in that big mass of transported bees, bee community. So all of these things we normally don't think about. We just want to do the right thing, but what is the right thing is the more simple thing, or the thing that we have the most feedback from, that we can have direct feedback. Like a farmer growing their own food, they know the feedback that I do this will happen. If I abuse that plant, it will die, or it will be extra work from me. Like if I make my own oat milk, for example, I probably won't be able to make my own soy milk or almond milk for this reason. But even if I just buy some oat, that again, we can talk about monoculture, modern agriculture malpractices, turning the soils and lands and forests and rainforests into deserts. So set aside that, but maybe you can explore all the branching out infinite consequences of humans trying to interfere in life itself. But anyways, you just buy your own pack of oat and you make it at home. You probably use less water. You probably use less equipment that will never deteriorate, or that was a lot of work and energy to produce, and a lot of abuse from the environment. So even that, the more local thing that you are doing, or you have an direct effect on, and you get a direct feedback from, is way better than just being absolutely disconnected and following trends and spiritual trends and loud opinions just blindly without even questioning, because we all do harm to the environment, I'm sure of it, and we all do harm in an everyday basis, maybe in our own lives or others' lives, and maybe that's just part of it. But at least we should just ask the questions and try to improve those things and see what feels right for us, and not follow these isolated spiritual teachings blindly. If you like to follow spirituality, I think the best way is learn from nature itself. That's probably the purest form. And another example, like for example, I told you before that I'm raising a special needs child, and obviously there are total differences between special needs children, but raising a blind child, a disabled child, or not my situation, but like an autistic child. And I see a lot of mothers living like this is the purest and hardest spiritual path, even them being spiritual. Just doing the everyday life routine, sometimes even cursing, sometimes even drinking a glass of wine or whatever. Maybe some of them even take some relaxing medications. So you can see it's not the classic spiritual path at all. It looks pretty non spiritual. But isn't caring for somebody and sacrificing your own life for somebody, isn't it the highest form of love and spirituality? So you see what I'm saying? That sometimes we just want the form, the glitter, even in this spiritual aspect. While sometimes spirituality can look very dirty and messy. And I think that can be beautiful too. So just don't be fooled by somebody else's loud opinions and trends. And just again, follow your heart and the intention, not just the intention, obviously, the result of our actions, very important. Not the intention is important too. That do you have a pure heart or you just want some spiritual, I don't know, golden star or some pledges or rewards? Because it's not the same intention. Do you want to really be a better person for yourself, feel happiness and joy from the place of fulfillment and not being selfish, or you just want this again spiritual accomplishment so you can brag about that? So I just invite you to think about this and always remember that you have a physical body here and now for a reason. So you just cannot just ignore it and pretend it's not here and have the same goals as a spirit has without a physical body. Well, thank you for listening, and if you like this, subscribe or like or comment. I'm really curious about your spiritual path. How do you see it? What is your experience? Have you ever experienced like spiritual abuse or judgment from spiritual people who were on a higher level on the spiritual hierarchy as you were? Thank you for sharing, and see you soon. Bye.